Amaryllis, before we get started, could I make a little bit of a confession?
Of course.
Well, we've been podcasting now for how many weeks?
4 or 5?
4 or 5 weeks. And I'm such a true spirit and just a real person that I've realized that I have a problem keeping confidential information confidential. So if I'm ever put in witness protection and I die the very next day, it's because I've given out my address.
She's not kidding.
I'm not kidding,
She's
y'all.
not kidding.
I really struggle with it.
She's going to be texting and emailing her family
Yes.
in non-secured environments.
I'm going to be like, hey, guys, this is Tristy.
From Alabama.
From Jalabama. So, Anyway,
Something we definitely want to make sure that people know is that there's going to be spoilers.
yeah.
We're going to be talking about this as if, we've seen it, so we're going to talk about it top to bottom.
Right. Today's episode is all about
How not to parent.
how not to parent. Yeah.
How not to react to your child's kidnapping.
This is a how-to guide in reverse.
Correct.
This is not what McGruff the crime dog would suggest for you.
It's the opposite
It is the opposite.
of what McGruff would suggest.
Yes, exactly.
Did you spend, first of all, we're doing Abducted in Plain Sight.
Not for the children.
Not for the children. Seems like our regular norm.
Well,
Not
wait,
for the children. Not that
I
there's a
don't
lot
know
of...
that there's a lot of kid-friendly documentaries.
I was going to say, well, there's not a whole lot of kid documentaries.
Not a ton.
Not for the kids. This is actually, it came out on Netflix about a year and a half ago.
Was it that long?
Yeah, January 2019.
Okay.
But it's actually a film from 2017.
Okay.
And it just had not made it to Netflix. And when it hit Netflix, it went crazy.
Blew up.
Yeah.
How could it not?
Yeah. So I didn't watch it for a while because I thought Abducted in Plain Sight scares me.
Well, can I tell you, I watched it immediately, probably the day that it came out, because, my true love is true crime, and I'm all about something that happened in the 70s and 80s, and I'm all about abductions because, again, you've seen my face, you've heard my voice.
You're a target.
I'm a target. And so I have to really bone up on my abduction education to keep myself protected.
Yes.
So I watched it immediately, and it was not what I had expected.
No, it is, excuse me, it is not what I thought that it was sort of, back in the 80s was sort of the heyday. I grew up in the 80s.
As did I.
I was a teenager in the 80s, but I grew up in the 70s. But back then,
I was a zygote.
The big heyday, the big thing was you're going to get kidnapped straight from a mall.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like what every parent's night, because there was a very famous kidnapping of a young child named Adam Walsh. And he was abducted in plain sight from a mall. He was I want to say he was 6 years old. And he was found a short time later dead. He had been abused and dead. And that was a huge, huge thing back in those days. It was the early 80s. And every parent was scared to death, obviously, because this was so random. And it wasn't, typically you're groomed and you are, it's somebody that you know, usually a relative that will kidnap you.
Or if you're blonde-haired and blue-eyed or light-eyed like I was as a child, then you're going to be taken by the Satanists.
Well, okay.
And sacrificed.
That was also the big satanic scare.
Panic.
Yeah, the satanic panic, yes. And, and so when I saw Abducted in Plain Sight, I was like, I've seen enough of that. Now I have children. I don't want to be scared into, making sure that their hand is held up until they're 20 years old. And so
this is where you and I differ. Because Amaryllis is a much more, what do you
relaxed.
call it? Relaxed.
Free range.
Free range type. And I'm like, you're 19. I still need to walk you to the car at night. So
No.
A little different.
Yeah, we parent
We're a little
differently.
different, yeah.
But so when I saw Abducted in Plain Sight, I just didn't want to be, and I didn't want to be scared. I mean, I know these things happen.
Right.
I just don't want to be paralyzed by it. So when I turned it on, it was absolutely not what I was expecting.
How about it was more frightening than
More
thinking
frightening.
about someone grabbing your
What
kid
an
off the
eye
street?
opener.
Yeah.
What an eye opener. So if you haven't watched it yet, hopefully you have already watched it and you kind of can follow along with what we're going to talk about. But if you haven't watched it yet, be sure that you pour a giant glass of whatever spirit of your choice, because you're going to need to relax.
Just go ahead and take a tranquilizer.
Take a horse tranquilizer.
Yes.
Yes.
Because you're going to need something to calm yourself.
Just when you think it's over, just when you think the craziest things have happened.
Well, you think to yourself, I mean, it can't get worse than this. And then you go, well, it just did. It just did. So,
All right. Well, let's get started. So we open up, and this whole documentary is just the family talking.
Yes.
And then a family member of the kidnapper.
Right.
And there's some recreations that they did just to sort of fill in some gaps while they're telling the story. But it's basically like if you were in these people's living room talking to them.
You literally are in their living room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're just listening to them tell the story. Because nobody's even asking questions; they're just telling the story.
Right.
And so we start off with, well, actually, it's an audio recording of Bob Birchtold.
He liked to record himself.
He liked to record himself, and we start off with this really creepy recording of him talking about how there will never be another woman for him. He loves his Dolly more than anything in the world, and it's as true can be. And he is referring to Jan Broberg, a 10-year-old girl.
10-year-old.
A 10-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And that's how we kick it off.
That's right. And it's set in the 70s.
Yes, 70s.
I believe they said that they started in 1972 is when they met.
Yes, they met. Marianne is the mom. Let's get the characters.
Yeah.
Marianne Broberg. Okay.
Right.
And then there's Bob Broberg, her husband.
Right.
Then there's 3 daughters. Jan, is it Jan, Karen, and Susan?
Yes.
Jan, Karen, and Susan. Very 70s names.
Yes.
The Brobergs. And they're just a sweet Mormon family.
Yes.
And that's, their world is about to get rocked. And so they meet this man, Robert Birchtold, at church.
Yes. And they refer to him as B because his name is also Bob.
Yes, and so affectionately, they just all of them, top to bottom, called him B.
Call him B.
Yeah. So Bob Birchtold immediately begins the grooming process, but nobody really understands just yet.
Yeah. And it's just like your everyday kind of meeting of a new family. They were at church, and she was the organist, and this new family comes in, and they meet, and they basically said everybody had a best friend. Like, this family just clicked, and it was like the moms got along and the dads got along, and all the kids had a friend to play with, and they were just like, well, this is perfect.
This is perfect. They became best friends.
Yeah, and they lived very close to each other. They were
Bob B in particular would come in and out of their house as if he owned the place.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was just constantly there.
Well, and that's how they said how close that they were. Like, and it was back when you never locked your doors. Someone just walked in or came in, and that was normal.
Also, it was a quiet, trustworthy community.
Right.
They'd never really run into this, and this was a time when they didn't even have the word pedophile.
Right.
Or it wasn't in your everyday vernacular.
Yeah.
And we know now exactly what that is.
Right.
They had no idea.
And once he kind of befriended the parents, then it was he would come by every day just to hang out with the kids.
Yep.
And he was kind of like the fun dad and came up with all these great ideas for them to do and these games to play. And and it was just like, oh, look at B, how awesome he is with kids.
So one of our very first oh my gosh moments is Marianne starts talking about how B would call her during the day. He worked as a car salesman, and he would call her during the day, and he would say, "Can you bring me lunch?" I don't know why he wouldn't call his wife. But can you bring me lunch? Can you imagine Philip calling me?
First off,
can you bring me lunch?
First off, if Rhett called me and was like, "Misty, can you bring me some lunch?" I'd be like, "Rhett, can you bring me some lunch?" I mean, no.
Call waiter.
Where is your wife?
Yes.
Pick up an app.
I don't know why she wouldn't question that. Why she wouldn't say, I mean, I you know what? I'll backtrack. He was telling her that they were having problems, and that's how he began to sort of drive a wedge between he and Bob, because that wasn't really an oh my gosh moment when he was calling Marianne. What became an oh my gosh moment was they became a little bit physical on one of these trips.
Yeah.
That, it's, I suppose it's like when you're dating, you first are like, oh, you're meeting and you say hello. And then as the relationship develops, you begin to develop feelings.
Well, and you're more comfortable, and he had started to kind of compliment her.
Yes.
And
telling her what a horrible marriage he had, and how he needed companionship. And so...
And she was feeling kind of disconnected from her husband at the time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the perfect victim for him to start off with.
So when they were talking about that, Misty, one thing that really stood out to me was how, at this point in the documentary, we don't really understand the breadth of what he has done and is gonna do. But she does. This is 40 years later. Yeah. 45 years later, whatever it is. And she talks about him with such great affection. And like when she is describing their relationship, you can almost feel her feelings, because
it's like she misses it.
She missed it. Yeah. Like it made her feel so good. She really would long for something like that. He made her feel so good. And it's still right there. Even after knowing everything that he had done, which we're going to cover here in a second.
We'll cover later.
So that's, to me, I don't know about you, but that was just something that I was like, why you speak of this man with fondness.
Yeah. And it made me physically ill, to be quite honest, because there's no one in this world, not even my own husband, that if they did something horrible to my child, that I would have any ounce of affection for them.
Absolutely. That part of your whatever that is, your personality, your character, just turns off.
Yeah. Like, I don't understand.
Because one heavily outweighs the other.
Oh, absolutely.
So that really struck me, how she really talked about that. And, I guess she could have been talking about it. Maybe I misread it and she was talking about it with regret. But I really think it was fondness.
When she said, oh, I could, just that feeling. Yeah. I mean, it was gross.
Yes, I agree. That's really, really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
So he began grooming her. So now he has a relationship with Mom.
Oh, yeah. They have a full-blown.
That is one step closer. Mm-hmm. Well, she has 2 affairs with him.
Oh, yeah.
Right. This is the first one. This is the first one.
The first one.
And, but now he's got a relationship with Mom, with Marianne.
Right.
So what's next? A relationship with
Dad.
So I think this is probably the most famous oh my gosh moment on this program. And even my husband, who had not seen it, and he had heard about this part. And there's all kinds of videos on YouTube of people taping people who are watching this, and they get to that point
and they're just like what? Yeah.
So you might want to put the kids away for this one. Right. So do you want to talk about it? You want me to do it?
Well, I mean, there's really no easy delicate way to put it, but so, and you may disagree with this, but I almost felt bad for the dad. Okay.
Yeah.
Much more so than I did the mom. Mm-hmm. Like the mom, I could not understand whatsoever. Bob, the dad, seemed like a very sweet man. He seemed like he really cared about his family, but he also seemed like she kind of ruled the roost a little bit, and he was passive, and I think that B kind of picked up on that he was not an authority figure and was more of a passive man and someone he could kind of control. And so B and Bob go out on a drive one day, okay? Just two guys kicking back for a little drive, and B says, I'm not really getting satisfied at home.
My marriage is terrible. My physical relationship is terrible.
Yeah, I've got nothing going on over there. And could you help me out with that? And
B could see what he meant.
And B,
like an actual physical representation of what he meant.
Yeah, Bob looked over and was like, "Oh, you're right.
Is that a gun in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?
And so he's like, "It's not a big deal. You know, it's kid stuff, like as if you've done this before."
Yeah.
And Bob's like, "No, I hadn't."
Yeah.
But Bob's like, "I don't know what to do, so I help him out."
Yeah.
And y'all, my mouth hit the floor.
It is the craziest scene.
The craziest
scene
thing you've ever seen in your life. And
because first of all, when this man is talking, now he's in his 70s.
Oh yeah.
Okay, he's this sweet old man.
Yeah.
He's a florist.
Yeah.
He's very soft-spoken, and he was filled with regret and remorse. It wasn't like Mom, who was like, and he just made me feel so good.
Right.
This guy was like, I did the worst thing I have ever done.
Well, and it wasn't even so, and I think this is what made me kind of pull at my heartstrings for him. It wasn't even so much that he was embarrassed that he had committed this act with a man, like, oh, well, I've stepped outside of my norm.
Yeah.
But he had taken that as he cheated on his wife.
He broke his vows.
Which he did.
Yeah.
And he broke his vows. So, you know, it wasn't a big thing of, oh my gosh, I just did this with a guy and that's not something I've ever done before or thought about.
Yeah.
It was, I broke my vows.
Yeah.
And he was heartbroken
Oh.
and cried on the documentary
Yeah.
and was still just like, I couldn't believe I had done that. And feels terrible about it. And then it was like, B just kind of acts like it never happened.
Yeah. Like, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. It
Thanks.
was a one time.
Here's your stop.
Yeah, it was a one time thing, and like.
Okay, but I wonder, Misty, if it was just a one-time thing, because later on, when B is being interviewed, or we have tapes of him after he's arrested, spoiler alert, after he goes to jail and they arrest him, he goes, I entered into a homosexual relationship with Jan's father. And so I don't know if this one scene, which by the way was, they had written a book about their experience called Stolen Innocence. That scene was not in the book. It was only in the movie.
Okay.
And so I wonder if he is ashamed of that. And I mean, obviously he's ashamed. That was the first time he'd ever talked about it. But is it so shameful that he wouldn't admit to other indiscretions with B? Because B said, I entered into a homosexual relationship with him.
See, and I took it the opposite way. I took it as B, manipulated this act to happen so that he could hold that against him and go, oh, well, you did this. And so now we've had this homosexual relationship, when it was just this one-time thing of him like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do, and I did that, and I regret it so much. But he can look at it and go, well, you did it. It's not like I made you do it. I didn't hold a gun to your head. And so that one-time thing was like, oh, well, that was my thing I can hold against you. That's our relationship.
Okay.
That's how I took it.
Yeah.
Now, it could totally be the other way. It could be
multiple,
that they had even things had gone further, and he was embarrassed because he didn't want people to know that part of his life. I don't know.
I just wondered, when I heard him say relationship, does he just mean this single event?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, he could have named it a relationship just to
I mean,
get what he wanted.
He was a master manipulator. He didn't want the dad. So I felt like he didn't, it wasn't a thing where he wanted to exploit that relationship. He just wanted to get some dirt on him.
Yeah. Okay, so what is next? Let's see. So, because we're going to try to go chronologically versus how we see it in the
Yeah,
film.
because it's mixed up in the film.
It goes back and forth, and you actually do get kind of confused. And then, January 1974, Bob Birchtold. Now, they're all in the same church. They're all in the LDS, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon community.
Well, let's go back to 73.
Okay.
So in 1973, Jan accompanies the Birchtolds on a vacation to Seattle.
Oh, yes.
And he had all these weird stories about Jan rocking back and forth.
Just remember, there are 3 Broberg girls.
Yes.
This is the one that he wanted to take.
Right. He just takes...
And this is the one that the parents said, okay, Jan, you can go on vacation with these people.
Right. Right. And so he says that at dinner they're sitting there and she starts acting very odd and rocking back and forth, and he's so worried about her, and he's like, I'm going to take her back to the hotel. Yeah. She's so groggy, and Jan says she can remember this time and feeling very groggy, like something wasn't right, and she doesn't know if maybe he put something in her drink or if it was
allergy pills
or vitamins or whatever that he had given her. But she wakes up and she sees him naked.
Yeah.
And then she blacks out.
Oh,
and that's all she remembers from that trip.
And then he gaslights her and says, I don't think that's what you saw.
Right. He was like, you were very out of it. And
you
then,
must have been dreaming.
Yeah, and then even goes and tells the parents, like, she was acting really odd. Like, maybe you should keep a watch on her. I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah, so you start to get a picture of Birchtold, where he's not just an abuser. He's a narcissistic manipulator.
Right.
And what B wants, B gets at any expense.
Right.
Okay. So in 1974, Birchtold is rebuked by his church. Mm-hmm. They discover that he has been messing around with another little girl. Mm-hmm. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's a neighbor of theirs. Now, that was not in the movie. I heard something, an interview where, do you remember the neighbor that randomly said he had been, like they went on this boat trip, and he was like, and I decided I would never talk to him again.
Right.
Okay, his daughter was who B had been messing with.
Okay.
So that was not in the movie. They didn't say that part, but that's why he was like, he had been messing with my daughter, and I just knew right then. So I think this is the same person that
was
the LDS. So they rebuked him. They were like, hey, B, I don't know what is involved in an LDS when you rebuke in the church.
Right, but they handled it within the church. They did not go to the authorities.
That's right. Now, what's interesting about this is they made him go to therapy.
Right.
At this therapy, quote unquote, he went back and convinced the Brobergs, I'm trying to make amends. I'm trying to get better. Part of my recovery requires me to sleep in the same bed as a child.
Yeah.
For instance, your 12-year-old daughter, Jan.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bob Broberg, as any parent would, said, sure.
Absolutely.
Sleep in my 12-year-old daughter's room.
We will do whatever we can to help you through this.
Come 4 times a week for 6 months and see if you don't get better.
Right. But first, let me build a wall, because the girls are sharing a room.
Oh, yes.
And, Jan's getting older. So let me build a wall, because I'm a handyman. Mm-hmm. And
thanks, B.
Yeah, thanks, B. And that way I've taken her off by herself, so there's no witnesses.
Yeah. So that's what he does. So he comes for 6 months. Can you imagine? I don't like. It doesn't compute. I don't understand, because we have good friends. For your family is a good friend to our family. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't think anything about your husband. Like, I would trust him to take one of my daughters wherever.
Right.
I would not trust him to sleep in the bed with her.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
I mean,
nor would I.
What in the world?
Trust anybody.
Yes.
No.
Absolutely. Yes. And not to single him out. I'm just saying, I know they're good friends. And I was like, it just doesn't matter how good a friend you are.
It doesn't matter. If it's a family member, I'd be like, that's weird.
Yes.
Sorry.
Exactly.
No.
So it does not compute to me how Bob Broberg didn't say, or even the mom.
Well, and this is what really got me, because when I first watched that, I thought, he's making this up, but he wasn't. He was actually seeing a therapist
Who told him that?
Actually told him to do that. And play these creepy
Licensed
tapes.
by the LDS?
I'm not sure who he was licensed by.
The Church of Latter-day Saints.
Is that who it was?
I don't know. That's the only thing that would make sense.
Well, he said it was a therapist out of California.
Oh, gosh.
And that he had come up with this therapy, and you hear these creepy tapes that he listens to while he's laying in the bed with Jan.
Okay.
And that's the therapist. That's not B.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, that's the therapist. And so he had his license taken away.
You think?
A little while after that. Yeah.
But see, to me, this whole story could have ended right here.
Sure.
It just could have been immediate. No, you can't sleep in the bed, Mr. Accused Child Molester. Because it's not even just that they're good friends. He's making amends for having abused a little girl. And Bob Broberg says, well, I want you to get better. Here's my daughter.
Amaryllis, how about this? How about when we were in the car together and you said, can you help me out? I'd be like, Amaryllis, this is our last lunch date. I love you so much. This is the last time that you and I are going to Panera. I can't do it again. I mean, I think we would have ended it there.
Done. That's right.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
We would have ended it there.
There would have been so many times before that very minute where you sacrificed your child.
So many. But Jan is like literally falling in love with this man, though. At the same time. She
has what these overnights are doing.
Yeah.
Is creating more and more trust.
Mm-hmm.
Is creating a situation where he is her father figure, and he's driving that wedge, and because that's what it's going to take.
Well, and anytime she questions anything, he has a response for her. Yeah. There's one part where they have a sleepover at his house, and they all decide they're going to sleep out on the trampoline. Like, I'm sorry, when I heard that, as a little girl, I would have been like, well, that sounds like the best idea I've ever heard in my life, to sleep on a trampoline. As a parent, I'm going to be like, nah.
Yeah.
We good. We'll sleep in the house.
Yeah.
And especially with a grown man out there. No thanks.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you can sleep out there, but we'll be out there with you.
Right.
And, so will your sisters. And we're not, not the man who has just been accused of abusing a child.
Well, Jan wakes up and her underwear is down.
Oh, yes, that's right.
And she wakes up and she said she can remember being scared, and B is conveniently laying beside her. Why are you sleeping next to this child again at the sleepover? And she asks B about it, and he says, oh, well, you were tossing and turning and so uncomfortable, you must have just wiggled right out of them.
Can you imagine the gaslighting? Unbelievable.
And this is a kid. So what are you taught as a child?
Yes.
Adults.
Careful. Yes.
Well, and adults are, the ones that you trust tell the truth, right?
Well, in the 70s, we were not taught to be careful of. Over the last 20 years, we understand about pedophilia, and we know of reports because people now talk about it. But back then, that was just not something that Jan Broberg was prepared to defend herself from.
Right.
I have had conversations even with my 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Who is it that can see you in your panties?
Right.
Who is it that can take you to the bathroom? These are the only people. These are the finite number of people.
Oh, yeah.
That can see you in these positions.
Yeah, we start talking about that
my 13-year-old.
Immediately.
No, I mean, my 13-year-old is ready to shoot a gun at anybody that does these.
Oh, yeah.
Things. So we have these conversations, but the Brobergs, in a sweet Mormon tight-knit community, had no reason to have these conversations.
Right.
And so B, Birch told.
And you were taught not to question adults.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
During that time.
Absolutely. There's no reason.
Yeah.
There's no reason to. You trust everybody. And these situations don't exist.
Yeah.
You know?
And this poor little girl, she just...
Yep.
She fell into a wicked trap with this guy.
So for 6 months, this happens. At the end of the 6 months, one day, B walks into the house and says, "Hey, Mom, Marianne, why don't
Lover.
yes.
Hey, lover.
Yes, former or current lover. I'm not sure which one, but yes.
I think they were still carrying on.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. She says, or he says, why don't I take Jan to the horse stables today?
Fun.
And she says, Marianne says, no, we can't do that. It's not a good idea. Today's a bad day. She's got a piano lesson and blah, blah, blah. He goes, don't worry about it. I'll pick her up.
Right.
And I'll bring her back. She goes, okay, just bring her back by dinner.
Not with my children. Or let me take my own child.
Yeah.
He had several.
Yeah, that's the thing. Where were his children? Why would he never play with his children?
Well, he didn't want to play with his children like that.
He did not want to play. You know, I wonder, that's an interesting conversation to have. They did not participate in this. They didn't want anything to do with it. Now,
No.
I heard an interview with the director and the writer and whoever this is, the documentarian, and she said they reached out. They reached out to the kids and the wife.
Yeah.
The ex-wife, and they just didn't want anything to do with it.
I did wonder if they were victimized as well. Or
so
if,
it makes you think.
If not.
Yeah, well, they were certainly victimized in that their dad was gone. He was totally absent.
And I'm sure they were used as bait in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So, and I don't know if they were sexually victimized too, or if he was maybe just not attracted to that. There's also a really interesting story that was left out that I heard. Her name is Sky something. I can't remember the director's name. But there's a really interesting story that didn't make it in that is really telling. And that is, there was a point before the abduction where B wanted to adopt a child from a Mexican orphanage. And he went down to Mexico, had all the paperwork, picked out the young girl that he wanted. And had her in the car, in the van, whatever, however they were going to cross the border.
No.
And she was, he was not allowed to take her across the border. She was returned.
Oh, my gosh.
And I don't know if the paperwork wasn't in order. I don't know if maybe they discovered that he had something on this side.
Charges.
Yeah, exactly. But that young lady was saved from a life
my gosh.
of slavery, really.
Right, yeah.
And so isn't that interesting that maybe he just didn't want his own, like maybe he loved his children enough to leave them alone in that respect.
Right.
But they didn't want to talk. They didn't want to participate. Neither did ex-wife. They were like, we just want it behind us.
I can't really blame them.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I can't either.
That would be horrible.
So anyway, so B comes in and says, hey, I'll pick her up and
we'll be back before dinner.
We'll be back for dinner.
Yeah.
And so Marianne says, okay, again, this man just picking this, it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
At all.
So, Jan says, we got in the car. B gave me an allergy pill. Take this pill. It's an allergy pill.
Because the horses.
Because, yes.
Horsehair.
Yep.
We'll do that to you.
And, well, yeah. And so she did. He's B. He's a father. He's a second father to them.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I don't remember
she passed
when
out.
I passed out. And so this is when you start thinking, okay, they were crazy before. Now they're almost neglectful and
right.
And you want to send them to jail.
So now she's passed out, and it gets to be around 9:00 that night.
That was a Thursday.
That was a Thursday, and it's around 9:00 that night, and they're getting worried. And B's wife comes over, and she says that she's worried, but insists, don't call the police.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
It's fine. You don't want to call anybody. And here's how Jan's parents, God love them, they didn't want to upset Gail.
Yeah.
Gail is B's wife. They didn't want to upset Gail, so they didn't call the police right then.
I don't understand. Like, I want to talk to them and please help me understand, because what is your motivation? Do you really love this woman enough that you don't want to hurt her? You love her more than you worry about your child's safety?
Right.
Or is this a religious situation where you're supposed to, somehow take care of your neighbor?
Like, forget being polite. Your kid is gone.
Your kid is gone.
Your kid is gone,
Yeah.
okay? And, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have all these ways to get in touch. Like, they were literally sitting there,
Yep.
no idea
Yep.
where their kid's at.
Yep. That was Thursday.
That was Thursday.
They didn't do anything Thursday.
And they didn't do anything.
They didn't do anything Friday.
And then Saturday's the weekend.
Saturday comes along. They called the FBI. They were like, we're closed.
Yeah.
But she said, I didn't want to call the emergency line because, it's not really an emergency.
She didn't want to bother anybody.
Not really an emergency.
She literally said, I didn't want to bother anybody.
Right. So then along comes Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Still no B. Still no Jan.
Yeah.
5 days after they disappeared, they call the FBI.
Monday.
5 freaking days.
Can you imagine? And they've heard nothing.
Nothing.
At all.
Nothing. So they call the FBI. The FBI goes, ma'am, she's been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No.
And they literally have to be like, no, for real. She's been kidnapped.
Let me prove it to you. Their camper is gone.
This is when I start to go, Gail's in on it.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
This is when I go, Gail's in on it. Because I'm sorry, if my husband was just this like wonderful man who loved to carry children to horseback riding lessons, if that was his ministry, then even still, that night I'd be like, well, he's dead in a ditch.
Yes, he's had a car
I'd
accident.
at least want people looking for him. She doesn't want anybody looking for him. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Gail knows what's going on. She's very well aware that he's taken this baby.
Yeah, so the FBI goes and talks to Gail, and she was like, well, we do have this camper.
I mean, it is missing.
Let's go see if it's there.
I don't know.
I would have gone there on Thursday night.
I haven't seen it in a while.
Yes.
He was carrying out a large food supply. I mean,
3
Gail.
suitcases and,
Gail.
oh my gosh. I would have, it just makes sense to me. I don't know. I wish I could have been there.
Don't you normally take a fake ID to horseback riding lessons?
And horse pills?
Yeah.
Yes.
Tranquilizers?
So what had happened is Birchtold had taken their motor home. Okay. So they've been gone 5 days.
Yep.
About 5 days into this, or I don't know how long, 5 or 6 days. I don't know how long it had been when the FBI discovered. They also had a car.
Uh-huh.
Okay. B had broken the window.
Yeah, he ditched the car.
Ditched the car, broke the window, left a little blood on the window so as to think they've been kidnapped.
Both of them.
Both of them have been kidnapped, or maybe they've been in an accident or something.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of throw everybody off the trail.
Yeah.
And of course the FBI is the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
it's
not going to work.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So he has, the FBI has now discovered that B has a penchant for little girls. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's when we see Birchtold's brother.
Oh, what a gem this one is.
Birchtold's brother.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a pedophile, and I knew that.
Oh,
and I quote,
I have never seen a person that could care less
about
his
brother being a pedophile.
His brother being a pedophile.
His brother targeting their stepsister or half-sister.
But let me tell you what he did like. Birchtold could sell some cars.
Yes, he could.
I mean, brother owned a car lot, and he just went on and on about what a great salesman he was.
Well, of course he is. I mean, he's magnificent at talking
He is a
into
master
people.
manipulator. He steals people's children. I'm pretty
Out
sure
from under their nose.
he could sell a used Honda, okay? Like, whatever.
Yeah. So this guy was something else. His brother was resigned to,
And was just kind of like, well, that's the way it is. He's a pedophile.
He was a pedophile, and I knew that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he said.
He abused our sister.
Now, in all fairness, I don't even remember what his brother's name is. Not that it matters, but the brother is the
names.
only one from that side of the story that would talk. Mm-hmm. So that was the only voice outside of Birchtold's own voice in the recordings that we had from that side.
Right.
So it was good that, he said that, but it sounds like even his wife may have known because he was a pedophile, and I knew that. So
Right.
how can everybody else not know that?
Exactly.
It just seems like he was not as careful as he might have thought that he had been.
Right.
And unfortunately for the Brobergs, they just didn't see it. They just saw a sweet man.
They found out a little too late.
Okay, so where are we?
Well, so they've taken the motor home and they've abandoned the car. And now Jan wakes up.
Yeah.
And it's dark, and she knew she was moving. She knew she was on a bed, but she has like wraps on her wrists and her ankles, which normally you don't do on a vacation.
No.
You normally don't do that. But then she hears this monotone voice talking to her in her ear, and it tells her that basically her dad's not her dad, that she's part alien, and that she's on this mission to find a suitable man to have a child with, and then that child will save the planet.
Right. Now, the person or persons telling her these things are two aliens.
Right?
Named Zeta and Zethron.
Sure.
That's an important part of this.
Z and Z.
Z and Z.
Right.
This is an amazing turn of events for me because it really shows the depth and breadth of B's manipulation and how he thought through this. What can I do to help her understand that she belongs to me?
Right.
The only way I can do that is to brainwash her.
Yeah, and he even sets a timeline because Z and Z then tell her that she has to have this child by the time she's 16 years old. And if she doesn't, then they've got to back up, and that'll be her sister Susan.
Yep.
So basically, they're saying you've got to get this done by the time you're 16. And if you don't, then your sister's going to have to do it. Or the planet will be destroyed.
Yep.
And we've got a male companion for you, and we'll present him to you.
And the recording told her B was her partner.
Yeah.
It was going to be her partner. He tricked her. He tricked her by being cut and bloody, like he had been attacked, and he had heard this same recording, and he had been told the same message, and that the box told her to get to doing whatever makes people happy.
Right. And she's all of 12 years old at this point.
Gosh. And
let me tell you, when I don't think it really hit me because 12 today is a lot different.
Yep.
Girls are much more mature physically and mentally.
Exposed to a lot more.
Not that that's a good thing by any means.
But they are. They're just more mature
but
than
they just are. This baby at 12 looked like a 9-year-old.
Yes.
And her little voice was like a baby.
Yeah.
I mean, and how any adult man could find that attractive sexually is
it's sick.
Revolting.
It's sick. He were you just did you just want to come through the screen and just hug Jan Broberg?
No.
Even at this age, she's in her 50s.
Yeah.
You can just, this kind of wound never goes
heal.
away. And when she's I might cry about it just thinking about it right now when I hear her talk.
Yeah.
Because they even had this visual, and she said there was a little window above her where he was raping her. Yes. And I'll also add, he was very gentle with her.
Right.
Because number one, he did love her in his sick way. He loved her.
Yeah.
And number two, he knew that he could injure her.
Right.
And that is not what we're wanting here. We want her to love. He wants her to love him back.
Right.
And injury is probably not the best way to do that. But he also wanted to get his rocks on.
And if she's medically examined,
yes,
he wants to make sure that there's no evidence.
Yes. And so he was very, very careful to do just enough to make him happy and to get her prepared for what might be coming on later.
And he also comes across as, he hates to have to do this.
Yeah.
Like, he shows her these books about sex and all these things, and is almost like a teacher, kind of.
Yes, gentle, loving.
Yeah, and is like, look, we have to do this together. I love you, and I'm sorry we're in this predicament together, but we're going to make the best of it, and this is just what we have to do.
And she says she would look through this window wherever they were parked, and there were leaves that she could see through the window, and she said, I just looked at the leaves. And it makes me like,
I know.
It just breaks my heart because I think about my own child, and if that were to happen to her.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and she just kept saying, I just
looked at the
Looked
leaves.
Looked at the leaves.
Yeah.
Gosh, that just breaks my heart every time I think about it.
And in her own little way, that was the only thing she could hang on to that was normal.
Yep. So this goes on for 35 days. Okay. So on day 35, B calls his brother.
My brother was always a sexual pervert. He always did like his little girl.
Such
And he
a
says,
gem.
hey, can you call the Brobergs and ask them if I can marry Jan in the U.S.? Because I already married her in Mexico, where I am, but I really want to come back home, and I want to be married to 12-year-old Jan.
And he won't come home until he's allowed to.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the brother, to his credit, says, sure, I'll do that. And instead calls the federales or calls the FBI, and the FBI calls the federales, the federales.
Federales.
And they all work in conjunction, and they rescue. They arrest B. They also take Jan, and it's protective custody, but they take her. Now, you may or may not know this, but Mexico can be they have a very corrupt system. And you can pay anybody off to do anything. And it's exactly what happened. B paid off one of the jailers, whoever, guards or whatever, and said, I need for you to bring me Jan. And so he gave him a few dollars, and Jan came down there, and he said, Jan, let me tell you something. We got to talk because I'm in jail. You're okay. You'll be going home. But when we go home, you can tell nobody about the aliens.
No.
You can tell nobody about the pills. You can tell nobody about the mission. And you had better not tell anybody about our sexual experiences. And if you do, Karen, your sister, who you love very much because they were very close.
Yes.
Karen, your sister, will go blind, and your dad will get killed, and you, Jan, will be vaporized.
Yes.
It sounds like I'm saying a cartoon. It sounds like I'm saying maybe the premise of a Marvel movie.
But you know what was so eye-opening to me? Because there was part of me that goes, come on, Jan. Really? Like, you didn't question this at all? But, I mean, as you were, I grew up as a Christian, and so I was taught about the Christmas story. And she said that's the way that she thought about it was, you know, Jesus was born and his dad was human, but his real dad was God.
Right.
And so that's the way she thought of it. And, you know,
she's the savior of the world now.
Maybe she's the savior, and like Mary, she's going to need to give birth to another savior that will save the world.
And at her age and her stage of development, and not just physical development, but cognitive and brain development, you're easily manipulated, particularly if it's somebody that you know and love and respect so much.
Why would he lie to me?
Why would he lie to her?
Right.
Especially, this is something so crazy that it almost, it's so crazy it has to make sense.
Right.
You know, why you can't come up with anything this crazy.
Yeah.
So,
and he basically says, you're to tell them that we were on a vacation.
That's right. And we had a great time.
And we had a great time.
Yeah. So Bob and Marianne pick her up in Mazatlan, which is like a beach area. It's like a vacation area. And things are not the same. She's really scared of her dad because now she knows that her dad is not really her dad.
Right.
And she's not allowed to talk to him because Birch told, that was one of the things too, you can't talk to your dad.
Yeah.
And
she was worried about B.
And
That's all she cared about.
Yep.
Because without B, she can't complete the mission, and the world's going to end.
That's right. She's scared to death. She is. I mean, can you imagine? Oh my gosh,
I can't even.
The weight of the world is on this child.
Yeah.
Why? Because of some dude that wants to have sex with a little girl.
I mean, it's not just she's being sexually abused, but now she has this like
emotional
mental mind game that would be too much for an adult to handle, much less a kid. And so they end up taking her in to be examined. And the physicians say there's no trauma or sexual abuse. And
that was by design.
And she talked about it like it was a vacation. She went back to school and she seemed fine. But her dad said that she's not our Jan.
Yeah, except at home. Like
Except at
she
home.
was.
She was fine out in public.
Yeah.
But at home, she just wasn't the same.
She wouldn't sit next to her dad on the flight, even like
Right.
when they first rescued her.
Yeah.
She only wanted to sit next to her mom and communicate with her mom.
Right. And she said that literally when she got home and returned to school and back to regular life, that she was consumed by thinking about B and this mission.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't get to him.
Time's a ticking.
He was in jail.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't
Time's
get
a
to
ticking.
him.
All right. So somewhere along this time, I'm not sure how much time elapsed, but Gail Birchtold knocks on the door.
Now they're told to stay away from the Birchtolds. Like,
Oh, yes.
the FBI says, listen, guys,
Let me have a conversation.
your daughter's been kidnapped. So it's probably a good idea if you guys aren't like having supper club
Right.
on Saturday nights.
Right.
And they were like,
Cut off this relationship.
okay. I mean, but they did, but they got a knock on the door.
Yes. Knock, knock, knock. Who is it? It's Gail Birchtold.
It's Gail.
Gail says, hey, can I talk to Bob? Not you, Marianne. I want to talk to Bob. And they have their conversation. Bob comes out. Gail leaves. Bob comes out and says to Marianne, well, it looks like
Marianne
we're going to...
leaves.
No.
Oh, no, after Gail
After
talks.
Gail
Okay,
talks.
yeah.
Yeah, Marianne and Bob are there, left.
Yeah.
And he says, well, we're going to have to drop the charges against B. And Marianne says, what are you talking about? He says, well, he said that if we didn't, he would tell everybody about your relationship with him, and he would tell everybody about our relationship, my relationship with him.
Right.
And so, sure, we're going to drop the charges. So they signed an affidavit. They, in order to protect their family's name and a reputation, they sacrificed their child's
Innocence.
yes,
And her justice.
yes,
And basically signed something saying that he had their consent to take her.
they signed something that said we really think he thought that he had our permission.
That it was okay.
Yeah, we think he thought he had our permission. So
Yeah.
we are not mad. We're not mad.
I'm sorry. You could tell any kind of story on me you wanted to. True, false, whatever. There's no way I would drop charges on a child molester
Oh my
against my
gosh.
child that had kidnapped her and married her.
And married her and changed her. Really, you get her back home, and she's not their child anymore.
No.
So
She's-
it didn't
he's
just
damaged
affect
her.
Jan. It
Yeah.
affected their entire family. The sisters,
Yeah.
talk about how it was just different.
Yeah.
Jan was different,
She's
and
very removed.
this was a family problem. This wasn't just a Jan problem, but it just. So they said okay, and I suppose some of that is also again the 70s.
Right.
Where it's just like Birchtold just really understood how to manipulate the time,
Right.
How things would be seen.
Well, and also a lot of these men back then owned their own businesses. And so Birchtold, Bob was one of them, and he could have lost his business. He could have lost his livelihood. That's how he fed his family.
Yeah.
And so you're not just like smearing his name, but back then he could have lost everything had these allegations come out against him.
Well, things do not end here.
No.
Okay, this is not a situation where Birchtold says, "Phew, I dodged a bullet. I'm going to get out of here."
Right.
Things keep getting from bad to worse. Somehow, he sneaks a box into Jan's room, like a radio type receiver box, recorder.
Yeah, how did this happen?
I don't have any idea.
Because you know who I think it was? Because I thought about this when that came on. Because after they dropped the charges, B moves to Utah and he starts working at that car dealership doing such a good job. His brother just thought he was the best. And
He was a pedophile, and I knew that.
He could sell anything to anybody, and he was a pedophile, and so that worked out great.
Yep.
And but he came home every weekend, and he said that people would feel sorry for him And he was at church every
He was
weekend.
at church every week.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, it's baffling. This entire story is
How does
baffling.
this happen? So when I thought about the box, I thought, are we still leaving our doors unlocked?
Maybe.
Your
Or does
child.
he still have a key? They didn't think to change their locks.
Or is Gail sneaking her little tail through the window and
I
putting
don't
it
know.
in there?
Oh, maybe.
But I'm sorry. After my child has been abducted, I mean, Avery's never been abducted, and I go through that room like a fine-tooth comb,
Yeah.
buddy. I'm looking for anything that's out of place in any of my children's rooms because that's what you do as a parent to
Yeah.
keep them safe. You make sure they don't have things that are dangerous or
We're moving away from next door to the Birch Tolds, by the way, if that happens to us.
yes, ma'am.
We're moving to a different state.
We're going somewhere
Yeah.
else. But I think if I saw a white box that had a speaker in it, I think I'd go, well, what's that?
Let me hit play.
Let me see what that is.
Let me hit play. What was recorded on this box was a follow-up to the recording from the camper from when she was first kidnapped. So Zeta and Zethron are back and are reminding her, Jan, don't forget, you have a mission. You have got to have a baby with B or this world is going to end.
Be gone, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to end.
Yeah.
So, Jan has no idea how this thing's getting in here. Obviously, Zeta and Zethron brought it.
Right. Well, and then she and B start communicating again.
Yep.
And she's getting notes in school. Like, she can't even escape it going to school. Like,
Right.
somehow he's getting notes to her.
How? How does this happen?
I can only think his children.
Yeah, but surely. Okay. I mean,
If your dad comes up to you and says, give this to so-and-so, and,
I wonder if the kids knew what had happened.
Or give this to somebody that'll give this to her.
Yeah.
You're going to do what he says.
Yeah.
But she would get these notes during school, love notes, and
Yeah.
she would write love notes back to him.
Yeah. She began to fall in love with him.
Yeah, and,
Because now she's 13 or 14.
she is, and
Yeah.
she's at that age where, just any child
Yeah.
wants to be independent and
pushing boundaries.
yeah, pushing boundaries. And here's this man who lavishes all this affection on me, and I have this important job. Like, can you imagine? My kid at 13 thought she knew everything. Can you imagine
Yeah, I have a
somebody
13-year-old. Yeah.
talking her into believing she's the savior of the world? Good night. That's
Right.
got to be
Yeah.
a time bomb.
Yeah.
Um,
So Jan has fallen, and she says, I loved him more. It was a real, true love, more than anybody, even as an adult, that I've ever loved. And,
Yeah.
as an adult, I understand love, and I can look back and tell you, I loved this man.
Well, and you look at these little letters because they show some of the letters
Yeah.
that she wrote, and it reminded me of like little letters I would write. And you remember you would write little flowers on
Sure,
them,
hearts over
and
the
you
eyes
would
and-
fold them up to look like certain little things. And she was a baby.
Yeah.
She was still a baby.
She was a baby. So she's fallen in love with this man. But now, let's get back to Marianne. Now, B. So far, let's recap. So far, there has been an inappropriate relationship with Marianne. There has been an inappropriate relationship with Bob. He has kidnapped and married Jan
And
in Mexico
and
for
molested her.
35 years. Yeah, molested her.
Right.
He has molested another child in their church.
Yes.
Okay. And they have been threatened, blackmailed to sign affidavits testifying that, hey,
They're going to
everything's
spread
fine.
all
Yeah.
their business. Yeah.
So really the next logical step is for Marianne to run into B in Ogden, Utah.
Yeah.
And for her to have an 8-month affair with him.
All right, guys, go ahead and go get yourself a drink right now.
You don't.
What in the world?
What is
Like,
happening?
what makes you go, B, since you abducted my daughter, you're just looking better than ever.
So then, so Bob then says, hang on, I got to make a phone call. Ring, ring. Hey, Bob Broberg? Yeah, hey, this is B. Just want to let you know I'm sleeping with your wife.
And she's gonna run away with me. Poor Bob.
Bob Broberg.
Bob.
Oh, my gosh.
I cannot.
Does this not help you understand even more what a predator this man is? He's relentless.
And Marianne.
Marianne. Well, he just made me feel so good.
Baby.
Just made me feel feelings that I didn't have for a long time.
Go ahead and turn this off if you're near the children. Marianne, you can buy something. Okay? Please don't go to your child's abductor to feel good about yourself. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
What is wrong
What
with you?
in the world?
And still, like, sounds like she is just talking about an old friend.
Yes.
Really?
Yes, he just
Y'all,
made me feel.
you have to listen to her voice to understand.
He could give me a great feeling about myself.
Okay, so we have an 8-month-long affair. Birch tells B, and so B files for divorce.
No, Bob files for divorce.
I'm sorry, Bob files for divorce. Yes,
From B.
Yes,
Not from B.
I wish.
Y'all, all these B's are getting crazy.
There's Birch there's B, there's Marianne. All right, no, Bob Broberg files for divorce from Marianne. Okay, because now this is twice that she's stepped out on him with Birchtold, who I'll remind you kidnapped their child.
Exactly.
And married her.
Yeah.
When she was 12.
Yeah. I mean, this is the original B. Before there was that B, Carol Baskin, you've got this B. And let me tell you.
Yes. It's a whole different
He's
kind
a
of B.
piece of work.
Yeah. All right. So, again, you think, wow, this family has been through so much.
Right.
But it's almost like it's just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is 1976.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. B had moved to Wyoming.
Right.
He had left Utah. He bought a fun center. Remember, like we used to have in the 80s?
I'm sorry. Since when did we allow pedophiles to open up fun centers?
Yeah.
I thought they weren't allowed near parks, much less opening one for themselves.
Well, they certainly aren't now. You can't be allowed. You're not allowed. Yeah.
I mean, I heard that and I thought,
Yeah.
how?
Yeah.
How in the world?
So he goes to Wyoming and he opens this fun center, and Jan wants to work there because she's still in communication with him.
Yeah, but now Bob and Marianne,
They reconciled.
They've reconciled.
They've reconciled, yes. They were separated for a while, and then they realized we love each other. We can't raise these girls without each other.
I think Marianne remembered that B kidnapped her kid at some point and was like, well, maybe this isn't a good idea.
Yes, yeah.
She read the love languages book and said, that's not really one of them.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Kidnapping,
Yeah.
totally outside of that
Probably
scope.
not a good
Yeah.
idea.
So they're in Jackson Hole, and Jan is like, ugh, I really, really want to go work for B. No, that's not how she said it. Mommy, I really, really want to go work for B. I really, really do. And apparently made life miserable for them.
How miserable can a 12-year-old make your life, though?
Well, she's 14 years old by now.
That's right. But
She's
she looked
14.
like she was 11.
She did look very young, but this is the one part where I could really relate to Marianne, because she said she just was angry about everything, and she would complain about everything. And you and I have teenagers. I have a young teenager. You have one right in the thick of things.
I live with one.
And I'm just getting started down that path with my teenager. And you tell stories, and I'm not sure that that we're going to survive.
I mean, let me tell you, they have stamina that will outlast anything I've ever seen in my life.
So Jan is like constant. She's making life miserable for her. So Marianne says, you know what? Sure. You can go to Jackson Hole and go be with B for 2 weeks and live in his motorhome.
Oh, God. Marianne.
She put her on an airplane to Jackson Hole to stay with her kidnapper and abuser.
Again, Bob.
Bob says the understatement of the year.
Bob.
Mom says, I think you're really going to regret this.
I think you're really going to regret this, Marianne. I mean,
We are laughing to keep from
what
crying.
an authority figure.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, Marianne, I really think you're going to regret this.
I really do. I don't think we should do this. Oh,
This
you're
is
going? Okay,
probably
bye.
a bad idea.
Yeah.
Wait, go on Expedia and see if we can get better rates.
So they were going to go, she was going to go for 2 weeks. Okay. And so she comes back home 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And B's like, she really wants to come back. You should let her come back.
And the mission continues.
The mission continues.
The
Absolutely.
abuse picks
Now they're
right back
together.
up.
Yep. So she was so angry that she was going to have to come back. But Mom brought her back 2
Yeah.
weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not long. Now, B kept harassing too. Hey, Broberg, she really wants to come back. You've got to let her come back. She really, really wants to be with me.
Right.
And so Jan says, you know what? I'm running away.
Bye.
See ya.
I'm leaving.
So she writes a note, leaves it on the bed, a note clearly written by,
A baby.
yes. And so she goes. So this is kidnapping number 2.
Second abduction. Now, that's after the complimentary 2-week vacation of
Right.
abuse that they
Yes.
put her on a plane and sent her to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So she runs away. They have no idea where she's gone. They assume that she's gone back up to Jackson Hole. Mm-hmm. So this is where things get also even more crazy because they get the FBI involved. Okay.
Yeah.
And the FBI wires. the
Well,
phone.
at first they won't report it.
Oh, that's
because
right.
They're
Embarrassed.
What the crap? Well,
Really?
Jan's been abducted again. I'm so
This is
embarrassing.
It's going to make us look so bad.
I mean, this is going to make us look terrible. Let me tell you,
They're probably not going to let us sing solos anymore.
No.
We probably can't pass the plate.
my organ career is over.
Oh, my word.
Forget it. Prom
is happening?
season's coming up. Nobody's going to get corsages
Holy
from me. I can't. So
Didn't tell anybody.
They lie and tell people she's at her grandmother's.
She's at her grandma's.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's not at her kidnappers.
They
she's
wait
at grandma's.
2 weeks to report it. So instead of 5 days this time, because they didn't learn the first time, they wait 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, of course, Marianne says, we were just worried sick.
Amaryllis, I'm getting a headache. Can I please tell you, I was not prepared for this. Like, my head is hurting talking about it.
I understand. I get it. I get it. It's maddening. It's maddening. Because it's a real story. This is not
This
a
is
fake
not made
story.
up.
Yeah, it's
No.
not. Okay, so she is missing, and they kind of assume that she's gone back up to Jackson Hole, but they don't know for sure. They eventually get the FBI involved. The FBI taps the phones, and every time B calls, they click record, and Marianne says, "Hey B, how are you? Have you seen Jan?" He goes, "Well, I talked to her last week. She's living on the street and blah blah blah." Make something up.
There is one recording where she answers the phone and he's like, "Marianne," and she goes, "Oh, B." I wanted to vomit. I was like,
They talk like he's really trying to help them.
"Oh, B."
Yeah.
And now, not only has he obviously assisted in this second abduction, but then he tells this mother who is missing her child, "Well, I've talked to her, and she's prostituting and selling dope." And I asked her, I said, "Honey, how are you getting your money?" And she said, "Hard." What? Yes, she did. Go back in the recording.
I know.
She said, "Hard."
I know, but what I'm saying is he said that Jan said that.
So Jan said that.
Yeah, Jan did
no
not say
kid
that.
says that.
Jan did not say that.
Hard.
So,
Shut up.
Misty, 3
months.
of
3
this.
months.
3 months of this. And there was one time Jan called.
But now during this, B goes to jail.
Oh, yes.
He's got to serve his sentence for that first abduction, because he did break some laws, even though they said it was a vacation. He had a hard stint of 10 days.
Yes.
In the
Thank
county,
God,
in the
justice
county
is
jail.
served. Yeah.
Justice is served.
Yep. So 3 months, 3 months in, Jan calls the Brobergs and she's like, "Hey everybody, how are ya?
Hey guys,
I'm just having the best time. I miss you.
I love you.
Okay. Hey Jan.
I just wanted
Jan,
to...
this is your dad. Do you still want to get married to B?
Yes, Dad, I do.
Okay. Bye.
All right, bye. I'll talk to you later. What?
What?
I think at one point
Gosh.
she didn't want to wait to talk to her dad, and she's like, "Jan, baby, can you hold on for a minute? Dad's coming in from work."
I guess.
Bob, it's Jan.
Jan.
I mean, you would think that it was a call from Christmas.
Well, I mean, I imagine they were just pumped to hear from her. The sisters were super pumped. But just this, I don't know.
Like it's totally fine.
Yes, like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you finally found the time to give us a call. Like, you've been at sea and you've not had access to us.
And I don't know. I've never had a child that's run away. I don't
Yeah.
know if they were told to be very kind and just try to keep her on the phone. Maybe that's a tactic. I don't know. Yeah. But I think it would take everything in me not to be like, if you don't get your tail home right now. I would
tell me where you are this second.
Yeah. I'm losing it.
Yeah,
like, we need to know where you're at right now.
Well, now the only thing about that is she certainly had B right over her shoulder.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there was
you could tell she was hurried.
Yes, so yes, absolutely. She's got B over her shoulder saying, "Do not say this. These you can call them if you want. I know you miss your sisters, but you cannot tell them where you are."
Yeah.
So the FBI discovers that he has enrolled her in a boarding school in California, this Catholic school.
Well, now, the way they figure that out is they go and he's living in this motorhome again. Mm-hmm. And they go in and they search the motorhome. He has poster-sized pictures of Jan hung up all over this motorhome.
Yes.
It's so screwed up.
It's so screwed up.
And somewhere written on a piece of paper, they found this number.
Randomly, yeah.
Randomly scratched on a pad of paper, and they called the number, and it was
this Catholic school, right?
Yes,
it was nuns
Catholic
and stuff
school.
there, which is a really great place to hide her because, first of all, it's a school in a different state, and secondly, it's a Catholic school, and they're not Catholic. They're Mormon, very devout Mormons.
Right.
And what has happened is B has enrolled her in school, okay, and told them that he is a CIA agent, okay, and that he has got to go back to work on a mission. And if anybody shows up looking for her, they're the bad guys.
Right.
Do not let them have her because they are really after me.
Right.
So it's to us, it's really unbelievable because we have so many security checkpoints to get to our kids in school. I mean, at my daughter's school, in order for me to get into just the lobby, like I can't even go to a classroom, but just to get into the lobby, I have to show my driver's license to a camera outside the door.
Yeah.
Like I ring the bell, and I put my driver's license for the camera to see it. And then they say, "Okay, come on in." And then I'm stuck in that breezeway.
Glass lobby.
Yes. Yeah. And then I tell them I'm here to pick up my daughter.
And they ask to see
and
that
ID again. And then they
again.
ask to see it again. It's exactly right. And I have to sign if I get her out or whatever. But I'm not allowed to go in.
No, you
Those
have to
doors
wait.
are locked.
Yeah, you have to wait.
And I have to wait on her to come out.
If I want to have lunch with my kid, I have to have a background check.
Yeah.
And I have to make an appointment.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So it is baffling to us that you could just show up
Yeah.
and say, "This is my child. Don't let anybody in," and they just believe you.
And you know he didn't have a birth certificate.
No, he had nothing.
He had nothing.
He had nothing. So the FBI picks her up, and they took her home. She didn't want to go home.
And she is mad about it.
She is ticked.
She is
off.
ticked off that Bob and Marianne have found her
Ticked
again.
off. You know who else was ticked off?
B.
B was ticked off.
B was real ticked off.
He was really ticked off. They get a phone call one night that the family business, the florist shop, is a floral shop is
Yeah.
on fire. And they never could quite pin it on B.
Burned it to the ground.
Burned it to the ground. But at that point, that's sort of when Jan, things kind of started sort of clicking with her.
A little bit.
A little bit,
Yeah.
yeah. So we kind of know that Berchtold arranged through, because I think there were some witnesses otherwise, or in
Right.
jail or something like that, that said, yeah, this was arranged by Berchtold, but that never could get him on
Right.
those charges. But he was convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to a mental hospital.
Well, he was acquitted by reason of mental defect
Okay.
and sent.
And sent to the mental hospital.
And he also beat the arson and CIA impersonation charges.
I missed that.
He beat both of those. Yeah. Got away with that.
How?
Scot free.
What in the world is happening? It's like the laws were not made to protect the innocent.
No. And he's sent to a mental facility for, listen to this, 6 months.
Well, he should be cured by then.
Well, yeah, because pedophilia is totally curable.
Curable.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he's there in therapy. He remembers I've been sexually abused, and while I was taking care of my mother, and as whatever, I don't trust anything that comes out from
No.
from back
No.
then. So, all right,
18 months later,
yes,
B and Jan are still communicating, but not as much. And Jan starts to realize that he's just not as interested in her anymore. Because why?
she's 16.
She's getting older. She's 16.
Yeah.
And she met a boy at camp, and he buys her an ice cream, and she gets the ice cream, and she's kind of excited about it. But then she thinks, oh my gosh, something awful is going to happen
Yeah.
to him because of the mission. And that same day, her mom calls and said the dogs are sick, and she thinks that's
This is
her
it.
fault.
This is it.
And she thinks, well, this is it. And so then the next day, the boy's fine. Nothing happens to him. He's still alive.
Then it clicks. Yeah.
And she gets a call from her mom, and her mom said, the dogs are all better.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh my gosh, this might actually be a lie.
Well, before that happened, she was in such a panic that that the mission was not fulfilled, and she was inching closer and closer to that 16
Yeah, and
year.
this was before she turned 16.
Yes.
This kind of made her think maybe, but then she said she talked herself right back out of it and said, nope, the mission is real.
Yes, and
Yeah.
she's freaking out about it because B is nowhere around. She's unable to get the mission fulfilled,
She's
and so
almost
surely
16.
this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
So in a last ditch effort, she begins to plan her suicide, and she's got a plan B.
Murder suicide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And she says she wants to protect everybody.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to protect everybody. Thank God that did not happen. She turned 16, and the day she turned 16, she realizes, oh, I'm alive.
Right.
So's Susan, so's Karen, so's my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And she realizes Zeta and Zethra weren't real at that point.
And it's so sad because her plan was that she was going to tell Susan that Susan needed to carry out the mission. And if Susan said no, she was going to kill Karen and then kill herself.
Can you imagine if that had happened?
Can you imagine the stress on a 16-year-old?
That's what I keep thinking when we get to the end of this, and this is the end, thank God, she realizes what has happened.
realizes,
and she
yeah.
begins to tell her parents and open up
Right.
about these things. They finally realize, oh my gosh, this was worse than we realized.
We had no clue.
But what really angered me about all of this, I mean, there was, of course, all the obvious things, all the failures from every adult, or really from
adult.
her parents.
Yeah.
And all of this, what really angered me was that her entire childhood was stolen.
Oh, she had nothing left.
She has beautiful memories up until the time she was 9 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And those very important years through your late childhood and your early teenagehood, they're gone.
But you know what is so amazing about Jan is she holds no bitterness against her parents.
And sisters also.
And
They're like, they love their parents.
They love their parents. They totally feel like they did the best to their ability. they feel like that they were victimized as well, and she just wants them to forgive themselves.
Yeah. Well, there's no question about it that they were manipulated. When I was watching this for the second or third time, my husband was watching it the first time, and he goes, and this is not meant in a congratulatory or a nice way, but he said, this man is talking about B. He said, this man is magnificent. He said, he gets whatever he wants. He can do whatever he wants. He can manipulate whatever he wants. He can will things to happen. And it's true. I mean, certainly not at the end, but throughout this whole process, he wanted Jan. He had his eye on the prize, and he almost got her.
And this man is no beauty contest winner.
No.
Let me go on and tell you. He is not a prize.
Yeah.
But he can talk his way into anything.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter.
So they write a book. Mom begins to write a book as part of healing, and she and Jan write it together. And there's a scuffle at one of these book signings or something like that. And there's a scuffle because B is
showing up,
very upset that they're writing about it, and so he feels like he's being mischaracterized, or maybe he just doesn't want his dirty laundry aired.
Right.
And he accidentally runs over somebody, so he ends up in court.
Yes, he does. He does. And it's actually a biker.
Yeah.
There's a group called BACA, Bikers Against Child Abuse.
Yeah.
And they had decided they were going to come and stay in security for Jan because Berchtold had shown up at many of her things. And he straight up ran over one of them.
He ran over them.
Yeah.
So they're in the courthouse, and he goes...
And he had a firearm with him.
Oh, that's right.
When
we don't
he
know
got
what he was going to
arrested.
do with it. Yeah.
We don't know what he was going to
do with it. And, he's sitting there, and it's been almost 30 years since she has seen him, and he's like, well, I'm sorry that you felt that way. Or, one of those non-sincere apologies, like, basically, I didn't really do anything. It's really just what you thought.
Well, and it's court video footage.
Yeah.
And you can see he can't take his eyes off of her.
No.
Like, he is still very much obsessed with
Team
her.
Jan.
Yeah. And she's not having it. No. Like, I loved what she said. There was one part where he said, well, you're just doing this. You wrote this book to make money. And she said, no, I wrote this book to protect other children from predators like you.
And if you're a man, you would stand up here and you would admit to it and take your punishment.
Right. And you would go to jail.
Yeah.
And he was just like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, Jan.
Yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way.
I mean, what?
What is wrong?
I'm sorry you feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So the court grants her a order of protection.
Yes.
For his life, as long as he's alive. Right. I assume he's died by now, but as long as he is alive, he can never be around her.
Well, he's such
he killed himself.
Hero.
He killed himself.
That instead of taking his punishment, he said he couldn't imagine spending one day in jail.
That's right.
Now, she was abducted for how long of her life?
I didn't add it
Whether
up,
it was in and out of his control mind or physically taken. But he decides that it would be best for him to just take all his heart medicine.
That's right.
And down it with some alcohol and kill himself.
Yep.
And so that's what he did.
Yep.
And then 6 other women came forward about the abuse that they suffered as children. He was found guilty of 1. And out of all those women and all the things that he did, he spent a total of 1 year in jail.
I mean,
his whole life.
The number of lives that he affected.
For all the things that he did.
Yeah. And for all the trauma that was caused in particular with Jan, we don't know the stories of these other women, but Jan is a very well-adjusted, lovely woman.
Yes.
She told her story with sincerity, and you could feel the hurt and the trauma, but you can also feel the love that they had for their parents. Even the sisters were like, we are so happy that they are our parents.
Yeah.
And they were groomed. They really were. They made terrible decisions.
They did.
And they could have just been partially because they were naive. It could have been partially because it was the time they lived in. But for the most part, they were groomed and they were manipulated.
And they fell for it.
They fell
time
for
and
it.
time again.
Yeah. They never learned their lesson.
No.
And so, I don't know that you can say, you are at 100% fault. Certainly, they do bear some responsibility, but it wouldn't have happened without the manipulation.
Right.
That B brought to the table.
I will say this to their credit. I don't know that I would be brave enough to admit to the things that they fell for.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be brave enough to sit on a documentary or
Sure.
write a book and say, here's how I failed my child over and over again. But I think that was their way of trying to
Heal. They're still
heal
healing.
and make amends for that, and figure, we made these terrible decisions and we made these terrible mistakes.
Yeah.
And by telling our story, hopefully that will help another child. And so I commend them for that. And I totally commend Jan. Like, she is the picture of grace.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
The picture of grace. Like, I've never seen someone so forgiving in my life.
Yeah.
And, I look at people who get so upset over their childhood or the way that this happened or that happened. And then I look at this and
You've
I'm
never
like,
experienced anything like this. Yeah.
girl, you don't even know.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't even.
Yeah. I'm sorry you never got to go to Disney, but
Oh, you didn't get to wear Guess jeans. You're going to be okay.
You'll survive.
Like, it's
You'll
all right.
survive. Yeah, she's an exceptional lady. I've listened to some interviews with her post all of this, and she's an actress.
Yeah.
She's been in things that you probably have seen before and just didn't realize it was her.
Oh, okay.
You can look her up she's got her IMDb page. You can see all kinds of stuff. She was in Iron Man 3.
Really?
Yeah, she had a little small part in Iron Man 3.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and look.
So, and then just like a couple of TV series that she had some regular roles in.
Yeah.
But remember, because they talked about her being on the drama team or being in a play or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's an exceptional lady. And maybe she just realized early on, as an adult, the bitterness is going to kill me. Mm-hmm. And my parents just did the best that they could. And she doesn't give Berchtold a pass. This is not one of those situations where Jesus says you should forgive everybody. And Jesus does say that,
Right.
You have to forgive to be forgiven.
Right.
But that does not preclude consequences.
Right, your consequences.
And she doesn't give him a pass. She doesn't say, you know what, B, forget it. Mm-mm. She holds him accountable.
She's like, you should take your punishment.
But she realizes that holding on to bitterness and not trying to resolve it really is going to be worse in the end for her because B's gone.
Right. Yeah.
And she knows her parents never didn't love her.
Right.
They always loved her. They just had no idea what to do with this.
Yeah. So I think the biggest takeaway from this for me was at the end they kind of gave a statistic of 4 out of 10 children are sexually abused.
Scary.
So scary. And watching this documentary, I've watched it a couple of times. I watched it the first time and then again before we got ready to do this podcast, and just sitting there kind of thinking through it. And I have a daughter, you have a daughter, we have I have
2
sons.
daughters, yeah.
I have 2 sons, and my daughter is very much a social butterfly. She's spent the night at people's houses and things like that. And, I think to myself, you have to be so in tune with your kid. Like, you really do have to pay attention to those mother gut feelings when you just say something's not right.
Yeah.
And, Avery and I have a lot of conversations, and she's a real open kid with me. But I've always tried to keep a really open conversation going with her and letting her know there's nothing you can tell me
that will shock me.
That will shock me. There's nothing you can tell me that will make me love you less.
Right. Or even if it does shock me, it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Like, we will get through it.
Yeah.
And, just letting them know that you won't be in trouble if something happens to you.
Yeah.
And just like having the conversations about this is who can touch you, this is who cannot, this is appropriate, this is not appropriate. I always wanted her to know that anything that happens to you is not your fault, and you can always tell me, and we will protect you.
Yeah.
You never have to be scared.
That's what we tell our 5-year-old is too young to have some of that conversation with. You have to keep it very basic. But our 13-year-old, what we have told her since she was old enough, 8, 9, 10 years old, we have said to her, if somebody ever says to you, don't tell your mom and dad, that is your clue.
To tell me.
That's the first thing you do is come home and tell us. Because that person does not have your best interest at heart. And we say that to her over and over. Even just at 13 years old, we just had the same conversation just a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
The first time somebody tells you that, you come straight to us.
Yeah.
Because we will handle it.
Yeah.
And that there is not anything that anybody should ever tell you that you can't tell us.
Right. And also, if someone's doing something that they're not supposed to, you don't have to be polite.
Yeah.
You say no, you run, you do whatever you tell. Politeness went out the window in the 80s, I feel like. Like, we learned then that
you've got to scream.
You've got to tell, and you've got to.
Do you know what we tell our girls? This is does not necessarily apply to this, but it applies to Abducted in plain sight. Literally speaking, we always have told him this. My husband came up with this. If a stranger tries to steal you, what do you do? And we have taught them to kick and scream and say, help, an idiot is trying to steal me.
Help, an idiot is trying to steal me.
And we play it out all the time. Tell me what you're going to say. Help, an idiot's trying to steal me.
Yeah.
And so make as much noise as you can.
Well, Avery used to laugh at me, and she'll tell you this, and I'm a little overboard because I'm a very, protective, I'm a scary parent. But, I can remember her being 9, 10 years old, and we would be at a gas station, and I would be pumping gas, and I'd put my head in the window, and I'd say, somebody just put a gun to my head and took me. What do you do? And she would be like, I get Eli out, because Eli was a baby. Yeah. And she'd be like, I get Eli out, and I run into the store, and I call 911.
Oh,
and I was like, yes. And, we would go over those scenarios because you don't know what you would do. Yeah. Just like this little girl never in a million years dreamed that she would wake up and a man would be standing naked there, or her underwear would be down. If you don't have those conversations, these kids don't know what to say or to do, or that it's possible. And then you automatically think it's your fault.
Yeah.
So
I don't know why everybody can't be as great a parent as we are.
I'm accepting an award next week. I'd like to invite everybody out. It's called the Misty Mom of the Year Award. And so
you're the inaugural winner.
And I'm the inaugural winner. Just don't look at any of my past failures.
Right. Okay. Just look at my successes.
Just focus on the things I'm really, really good at.
Right.
And then that's it.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I've seen this documentary 3 times now, and I suspect I'll probably watch it another time or two, especially if it's with somebody that's never seen it, because it's so fun to watch their reaction. I want some
reactions so bad.
There's lots of reactions on YouTube.
Yeah.
We'll look them up here when we're finished.
Yeah.
There's lots of reactions. There's people that just jump out of their chair, or they're like, what the?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But all right, so next week, what have we got on the dock?
What do we have on the dock?
Well, why don't we TBA that?
Okay. We're going to leave a little teaser for you guys. Normally we let you know what's coming, but we want you guys to be thinking about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We kind of know what we're going to do.
We have something up our sleeve, but it's in the works, and so we'll see if it comes to fruition.
That's right. Yeah. All right.
Well,
as always, it's a pleasure.
It is a pleasure. Please don't let anybody steal you when we leave here.
Oh, my word. Well, you know what? My husband is in the office next door. He will walk us out.
Awesome.
Fantastic. As long as nobody steals him, we're in good shape.
I don't know. It's
Oh. Why don't you say his birthday, too? Why don't you give them our address and...
Remember at the top of this when I said about the witness protection?
All right. I'll talk to you later, Misty.
Bye. My PIN number is...